Yeah, great. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, so just a little introduction about myself. My background is as a chef, and I'm also from the States. I moved here to Iceland about a year ago to work for OmNom because they were so experimental and weird and crazy in the chocolate world, which is saying something, by the way, because the chocolate world is weird enough and very, very young. But so I'm a project manager. I do a whole bunch of different things now at OmNom. I really started chocolate making and improving the chocolate that they already had working. And then I moved on to sourcing new ingredients for us, more ethical ingredients, better traceability and visibility within the sourcing channels. But to get started, a little bit about OmNom. Get to the chocolate after this for the coffee break. We started here in a gas station in Reykjavik on the west side of town in Seltjarnarnes. And you can still go see this gas station. The windows are boarded up, but all of our writing is still on the walls. And it's a space about a quarter size of this room here. So it really wasn't much for all of our equipment to make chocolate, which means we only had about 200 bars a week, really when we were first getting started with one tabletop machine, cooling the bars down and everything just by hand on a table, and of course hand packing. So I'll go through just a couple pictures of what we had going on there. We were roasting cocoa beans, making chocolate from the bean, the original ingredient that all chocolate, white, dark, and milk comes from. And we were roasting them just on cookie trays or oven sheets in a conventional oven, which is really, really inaccurate when it comes to this type of thing, if you've heard of the accuracies within coffee roasting. Yeah, this is really where it all started for us. We could order like just a kilo or 500 grams of beans online from a different place in the world every single week. Just because of one real true website, one blog, so to speak, really, of a guy who started playing around with chocolate at home. So yeah, we had 4 different origins at the time: Madagascar, Dominican Republic, Papua New Guinea, and one other that I'm forgetting at the moment. But we've since played around and manipulated them, and currently have 3. This was some of our original setup. You can see we have a juicer, and there's a vacuum cleaner with a hose that goes around to this sort of box we created. This whole apparatus is for separating the bean and taking off its small papery shell. So you have a whole cocoa bean, the light papery husk, and then inside is just the nib, and the nib is what you want making chocolate, the cocoa butter and the cocoa solids in there. But we just use this PVC piping to really do this. And if you want to do this at home, I can give you some cocoa beans. You can crack them open with a can of peas and blow off the shells with a hairdryer. It's really tedious work picking out all of the light papery shells. But yeah, I think it's this kind of ingenuity that helps you in redefining the material that you're working with, because there's no small-scale machines for making chocolate. There's a lot of invention. Even these big guys on the left you see, these are for refining chocolate, and those machines are only less than 10 years old and rife with inaccuracies and everything. So it's a huge learning curve. These are probably the most important machines that we work with, and they temper the chocolate. So if you've had a bar maybe in your pocket, in a car, something like that, left in the sun, and then it re-solidified and it got kind of gray or grainy or chalky, it's not spoiled, it's not molded, there's nothing really inherently wrong with it. You can still melt it down and use it for hot chocolate or something like that. But these tempering machines make it so it has a nice shine, snap, good melting point in your mouth, and it doesn't quite just sit there crumbling. It actually melts away smoothly. So this was probably the biggest purchase that we made, was investing into one of these machines. Yeah. Like I said, we were hand wrapping all of our bars. We still hand wrap our bars, even though we've scaled up our production, which I'll show you in a little bit. But This was our old mold, and you can see a couple sweaters in the picture as well because the gas station didn't have heat, so we had some space heaters just to stay warm in the middle of the winter. It kept the chocolate nice and solid, but we were freezing, our hands wrapping the chocolate. And the packaging and the presentation and the design behind the chocolate was also something we knew from the beginning that was important to differentiate this craft high-end product from something that was mass-produced much cheaper. So I'll get into that too. Yeah, this is our new home. This is down in the Grandi Harbor area. We have a full factory space now, which we're really excited about. We've only been there for about a year, so we're still moving in, really. And you can visit the shop. I think it's really important not only to have transparency about where our ingredients are coming from, but transparency about how it's made. So if you stop down to the shop, you can see how almost all of the chocolate making process is done right through the shop windows. And we also offer public tours and everything to kind of explain the process a bit. So I have some tastings during the coffee break that we'll move on to, and little snippets of what we do on the tour. But I'll show you a couple pictures of inside the factory. Much bigger space now. We have a complete test lab area just for playing around in. 5 tabletop machines that we want that like hold 3 kilos maybe. 1 is what we started with in the beginning. Now we have 5 only exclusively for testing, not for true production. So there's always something weird and interesting going on. And one of our interns recently made like a soy chocolate with sesame seed paste, and it's just a really playful area. And then we have some more photos. These solid blocks you see wrapped up are finished refined chocolate. It's been ground down completely and then solidified to just hold all one flavor until we melt it down to turn into a bar. So I have quite a lot more that I can show you if you want. We still hand wrap, even though we make about 2,000 bars a day. We're still hand wrapping each one with a layer of foil, the envelope, the belt, and the sticker. We're keeping up with the machine so far, but if we get any bigger, I think we might need to invest in a packaging machine as well. And really the difference in material that I want to kind of convey is the amount of thought that's put into it, just like the solid wool team was talking about. Bean to bar is no more than starting with an ingredient directly from a verified source. Finding cocoa in the world that isn't from West Africa, where you have zero traceability, child labor, slave labor involved, and zero flavor as well. That would be something that that big chocolate makers do, which is perfectly okay. I still eat big chocolate on the weekends, but we think there's more flavor, more character, and more that we can do with it if we start from the source. So yeah, I've seen a couple of warehouses in Amsterdam in my cocoa travels where 200 metric tons of commodity cacao are just on the floor, filling up an entire warehouse, not even in bags. This next picture is a better situation, but still what commodity cacao really is, just like commodity coffee instead of specialty coffee or specialty cacao. And all of this would just be taken and really over roasted all the same so that the flavor is really equal, maybe added with vanilla or some other kind of emulsifier to make it completely even in a 200 metric ton batch. But yeah, we had 1 bag to start, one of these 60 kilo jute bags on our table in the beginning. And now we still order maybe just 1 pallet of these every couple months. So we're still much smaller. Yeah, you can see the beans inside the jute bag here. We take those, and the first step is really making cocoa mass. So after we've separated that bean and we've turned it into just 100% cacao mass, cocoa liquor, cocoa mass. You can see a whole bunch of different applications for this. All dark milk and white chocolate comes from this. The difference, and some people ask me what white chocolate is and if it really is chocolate, is that white chocolate just has the cocoa butter, just the fat within that bean, just the fat from that mass. So if you think of the mass sort of like peanut butter, or if you leave it to sit, the fat will actually naturally raise just like natural peanut butter, and you can collect just the oil and filter it so that you have 100% pure cocoa butter. That's often sold to cosmetic industries for more money than the chocolate industry. So that's why cocoa powder, the byproduct of that, the solids left over from that mass, is so cheap. But yeah, white is just the butter, sugar, and milk. And then milk obviously has the solids in there as well. Dark, you don't need the milk in there, of course, and you don't need the cocoa butter really at all. You can make it just with 2 ingredients, just the beans and sugar, which is what we try to do with ours, highlight the difference in flavor from those beans, and only add sugar really as like a sort of spice, just to balance out the intense bitterness of 100% cacao. And now you can see we have our 3 origins. We have Madagascar, Tanzania, and Nicaragua. They're all vastly different materials to me, even though I've worked with such a specific thing. So, you know, craft chocolate, high quality cacao sourced from verified sources. All 3 of these are very, very different to me now that I've understood the material. For instance, Madagascar comes from one single estate, one plot of land from one guy in Madagascar. And Tanzania comes from over 2,500 different farms in a collective area of Tanzania, but it's brought together to be processed all in one point. So these are really vastly different even from the commodity cacao that I was talking about in terms of how we know where they're coming from, how we know they're being processed. These things weren't ever really talked about or traced really before. Nicaragua is our newest origin, and it's one of my favorites. It's very different from the other 3 if you want to taste them side by side after in the coffee break. But Nicaragua is inventing a new sort of application to the processing of cacao. After it's been harvested off of the tree, you have fermentation and drying. And the guys at Ingemann that we're working with in Nicaragua actually offer 4 different types of fermentation. So one specific bean from one specific area, but also taken 4 different ways and left to ferment over the course of 5 to 7 days to a different temperature. So we picked one specific part of the fermentation from one specific bean that they had available, and if you try the 4 side by side, there is a huge variance in flavor. We also make the milk chocolate versions of each of those, and thinking about milk chocolate is very, very basic. It's very, very sweet. You might think of it as your childhood, as the chocolate that you were first introduced to. The closest thing we have to that is our 45%, which is quite high for a milk chocolate. The legal minimum in the States for calling something milk chocolate is, I think, 15% cacao, 15% from the plant. So 45 is quite big, but it's still very light and sweet. The next up is 50%. That's sort of getting darker. And then dark milk of Tanzania in the center there, the yellow one, is a 65%, almost as much cacao as Madagascar 66, but with additional milk. So it's sort of in between the 2. We decided to make it a sort of chocolate to convert you over to the dark side if you've only been eating milk chocolate your whole life. And then the last one, which I also have up front, the one that's my absolute favorite that we make, which is saying something because I love them all, is coffee and milk. This is actually a white chocolate that we have added so much coffee to that it looks like and tastes like a milk chocolate. Actually gives you a little caffeine kick if you have enough of it. I know that from experience. Yeah, it's a sort of reinvention of coffee even being incorporated into chocolate. Most other craft companies would even take coffee beans and just add them to a dark chocolate, making sort of a very dark mocha bar. But we decided to tone down the cacao and ramp up the chocolate, ramp up the coffee to the point where it's chock full of it. So I think that is a whole different understanding of what you can do with white chocolate. It doesn't need to be boring, plain, waxy, kind of just nonsense filled with palm oil and vanilla. But you can really, really use it as a canvas to paint any other flavor you want on there. And lastly, talking about sort of waste products as well, and the real thing that we like to convey in our school is using waste products to also reinvent into something else. So here I have a photo of what we do in our classroom area at the factory, and I have samples out here for you to pour next to your coffee if you'd like. This is a tea that we make, made out of just the shell, out of just the husk of the cocoa bean. It has quite a lot of flavor inherently, and we just brew it in the fridge cold for 3 days. All the flavor seeps in, we filter it out, and then you have a sort of clear liquid in between tea and coffee that's something different entirely. It doesn't quite taste like chocolate brownies, but you get a lot of the flavor from the cacao in the beginning of the process. This is a new world. You can brew it hot, you can brew it cold like we do. We also give it to Bork Brewery and I think Olvisholt Brewery here in Iceland that have been using it as part of the beer clarification process. And they find that it adds quite a lot of extra depth of flavor. When I was working in New York, someone took the shell, the husk of the cocoa beans to a farmer nearby, and he said it was great for using as topsoil on garlic and growing garlic, and didn't quite make the garlic taste chocolatey, but it had a whole new purpose that I would have never thought of because this is just a waste product, a byproduct for us. So yeah, I have samples of all of this out front, and I'm happy to talk more about chocolate and sugar science and all kinds of nerdy things about the material. But I know we're going on coffee break soon, so I'll wrap it up and start sharing some chocolate with you guys.